C7, a novella about the world's greatest mercenary that you never knew. Note from the author. At the time of writing this, I am 34 years old and have been brewing the C7 universe long enough to see cinematic universes use the same ideas that any creative writer could come up with. Some of these gimmicks may be obvious, but I kept some in because, well, hell, why not? This is a collection of 5 stories from the span of C7's career. This is my way of solidifying his universe, the characters, references, and accomplishments, so that when I make more detailed entries in the future I do not risk too little, too late. A word from our sponsor. My name is Black Whitman, pronounced Black White Man. If you bought the hardback version of this, you may see that I look like a mixture of Reggie Johnson and Wendell Pierce. Like their acclaimed film roles, I served a career in law enforcement. I am a retired detective and now an investigative journalist with only one goal: document the most popular mercenary that you will never hear about otherwise. If you have purchased this writing paperback or digital, then you would not know I seem like a hard ass visually. Having a voice like a gruff biker in my old age doesn't help either. I paint that picture to paint this. The following accounts have been documented by news stations, police reports, NORAD declassified documents, Vatican declassified documents, and even an offshoot of the old SETI project from the 90s. The events you are about to read unfolded in not so much detail the way I have creatively come up with, I am sure. I will say the meat and potatoes are all there. One last thing. I decided to take creative liberties with my wife Beatrice's help. I have Alzheimer's and dementia, early onset, so this project keeps my mind sharp and the creative side puts it to use. So once more, here is an abbreviated story of the greatest mercenary you will never hear about again. Sometime in the early 90s. So you didn't think to inform me of the change of plans? Barked David, standing at a somewhat slender and defined 6 feet 195 lean pounds. His facial features were symmetrical with a wide V, with a smaller one for a nose and sharp cheekbones. He gazed out a cockroach motel window with his crystal blue eyes, with a seemingly permanent scowl. He fumbles in his pocket for a pen as the man he was speaking with scoffs and retorts, "Does it matter to you how I did it? Or that I did it at all?" David sighed and looked down. "Sorry, Matt. This is our biggest deal yet, and I don't want to have wasted all of our time and resources and get nothing from this long shot." Matt, a computer hacker and former logistics analyst, sat with his bulky self-made laptop typing away. He was an easy 6 feet 5 and mainly skin and bone, with a generally pale complexion and wide smile. His skin looked as if it could be rubber when he grinned. His thick square glasses complemented this feature. When he carried his revolvers, you could easily tell, if you could turn your attention away from his front spiked hair. "Don't worry, Dave, I have some backup funds available from some of our last outings. And besides, SHADOW could always give us an advance with insurance." David scowls intentionally. "I'm not taking an advance to lose half of it when we complete this. And please, humor me and inform me of how you hacked the European Union databases without actually hacking them." Matt snickers and leans forward, adjusting his holsters. "Instead of traveling to Belgium to infiltrate and spend hours hacking to upload a program that could be seen easily, I went down to Silicon Valley, where the physical parts of a computer were designed to make the state-of-the-art antivirus software and hardware microchips. I altered the base plan to include a small line of code that adds a little black outline on the logo, as well as giving me a backdoor to each individual computer file once they install. They will have no idea for a decade with the hardware. They are updating their systems right before we travel. They were installed last week and are still pinging strong. Now, SHADOW stood for Special HQ for Abandoned, Distraught, Anonymous Warriors. This is beyond a mouthful for an organization's name, but when they found out it could be shortened to SHADOWS, PR ran with it. This group was tapped into the world's school systems when it came to discipline. Certain students that were always troublemakers were flagged into 2 groups. The group that was physically and mentally unstable, and the ones who got physical defending a property, person, or exhibited disturbingly creative self-defense techniques, i.e., choking a bully, unconscious with a rope from a swing, or a student taking the time to loosen the bolts on a skateboard. Incidents like the latter were often overlooked by the schools but caught by Shadow. Shadow followed all students, and before certain ones went into juvenile detention, an officer would visit and discuss options. This group was mainly interested in those with troubled or non-existent families. David was just one of many of the young people they have recruited and trained. SHADOW taught the kids discipline much like a boot camp. They are provided for, and once they can respect themselves and each other, they are taught hand-to-hand and survival techniques. If the pupils can handle this well, they are awarded Merc C cards, allowing them to do regular security detail across the planet with one of many shadow contracts as they continue towards their A license if they so want. The A license is the full-fledged mercenary. You can create your own faction, align it with a nation or an ideal if you so choose to, or make your own micro-country and take in third-party contracts including but not limited to hits, guard duties, transports, VIP shadowing, logistics, etc. The Class B is just an in-between that allows for weapon carrying and free travel and spot hire and war zone employment. Any students that do not make the cut still get some type of compensation, and depending on if it was just laziness or inadequacy, a good recommendation. If they were uncontrollable and could not tap into the discipline and control their emotions well, that's under speculation. Shadow is part of the world government. We all pay for it with taxes. Many just don't realize it's in the other category. David and Matt arrive at the airport in Orlando, where they meet the other pillar in their triangle, Andrew, who sports a well-trimmed beard, Lennon glasses and scruffy hair. Although moderate in stature, he was rather toned and is the perfect body type to underestimate. Bradas, Andrew shouts as he closes in for greeting the two. David was 20, Andrew and Matt were both only 18, just out of academy, high in their classes. Matt, specializing in digital and cyber tactics, allowed Andrew to focus on gunsmithing, performance, ballistics and right-hand field ops unison assignments. With him was a duffel bag with one small neon green tag signaling traveling mercs with tools of the trade. All the group knew was to get to London to pick up a competitive assignment in which up to 3 merc factions compete for the bounty and must prove it rightfully so. In the earlier days of merc work, there were loopholes of offing other mercs without engaging in a call to war suit with NATO. They knew it was a hit, and that there was one more faction they may encounter. I believe we are ready to go. I have more materials meeting us in London. Andrew states as he grabs the bag and adjusts his backpack. We meet with Doug as soon as we land. Matt says, handing out passports and itineraries. The red-headed stepchild, side child. Listen, I'm tired of being second guessed. I dealt with that shit most of my life and I don't need it now. If I screwed up, tell me, don't hound my ass, Karen. Mike growled as he was trying to fix a dresser that was close to being garbage. Mike, around 6 feet tall, a touch shorter with medium red hair and a pointy nose and typical green eyes. Karen stood at 5 feet 5, voluptuous figure and similarly pointed face. With a European accent she shouts back, I'm trying to help, and if you can't see that because of your pride, then fuck off. The two had a love-hate relationship. I have to go. I'm meeting a handler and I don't know when I will be back. Mike says and quickly, angrily flies off the handle by continuing with, before you say it, yes of course I don't know when I'll be back if at all. But please go ahead and bitch me out for being able to afford whatever you would like. Mike gathers his suitcase and backpack and leaves. A few minutes later he comes back in the door to face Karen, who is looking out the window with a tear in her eye. She knows what he sacrifices to be with her, just as he knows the risk of having her in his life in his line of work. He kisses her cheek. Mike, why do you have to do this? This mercenary work? Why can't you just stick to selling like you used to? Karen shows a rare moment of non-fortitude and whimpers in Mike's arms. Mike sighs and rests his thumb and index on his brow. I told you why more than a few times. Mike departs after making a half-assed attempt at peace with his fiancée. Although he is presently stationed in Germany during a brief vacation looking for his first real assignment that was not vicious bodyguarding, patrolling, nor squad missions, he was anxious to head to the rendezvous in England. Mike was handed the job by a former squad mate. As for the first real opportunity to do a long-distance hit, he was more than eager to get started. The wine and dine. David and his crew step out of Heathrow International and immediately are greeted by a limousine. Moore, Pruitt, and Kenyon, I presume. Before David could respond, Matt proclaims the group's presence proudly. The three gather in the limo and settle back for a ride. There is a gentleman that briefs them on specific terms of employment before meeting with the curator. My client wishes to convey his hospitality as well as apologies for not making it just yet. We are traveling to meet with him but may be delayed slightly. He does have others to meet with. Firstly, help yourselves to the mini bar. I am sure your travels were exhausting. The man shuffles through his carry case. The man, dressed well in a generic black nonchalant suit and rectangular glasses with light black hair slightly parted to the right, although it obviously wanted to be straightforward. Matt helps himself to a fine whiskey, and Andrew to a sparkling water. David grabs a mini bottle of water but holds off on opening it. David responds to the man's premeditated speech. "We thank you for the hospitality and graciously accept your offer." David smirks. The man pulls a satchel out and glances over the corporate text that he needs to drone off. "Secondly are the conditions to the job if you were to take it." David opens his water. "I'm all ears." The back and forth. "Say that again please," Mike shouts in the loud bar. "You are competing with up to 2 other teams for the bounty." "This is somewhat known, but to what extent and the rules?" "Well, we keep those under wraps until the date of action." This man was the opposite of his counterpart in David's limo. He had a red buzz cut, glasses due to astigmatism, about 5 feet 3 and very muscular. He wore a sleeveless shirt and cargo shorts. "Look, Nook, I have heard it through the grapevine about this Doug character. He's no Marlon Brando, no Godfather or Scarface." "Why all the layers?" Mike asks in a loud voice yet again. Nook finishes his cigar. "I have a car waiting for us. I will explain the rest on the way, deal?" Nook stands and extends a handshake. Mike sits back, still relaxed, and stares at Nook warily. "What stops you from putting a bullet in my head, or me putting one in yours for trying?" Mike asks. Nook smiles and chuckles. "My paycheck." Explain what Nook is and does. The big reception. A few hours go by. David and his crew finally pull up to Doug's mansion. 2 guards at the gate, moat, about 20 feet across, nearest town a mile and a half out, nearest house 4/5 of a mile. This and much more running through David's mind as they pull up. The man leads the group into a vast courtyard behind the mansion where David could hear the familiar voice of Doug, although it had been several years. Doug was on the phone going on about a deadline or an insurance policy or something of the likes. "David," Doug yells. David smiles slightly. "Haven't seen or heard from you since graduation." "Good to see you," David states gleefully. All Doug says in return is, "Good to be seen." The group moves to an enclosed pool area on the 2nd floor. Doug tours them around while constantly offering fine cheeses, wines, caviar, and spirits. "Before you ask, David, I can't necessarily give you a head start, so to speak, so don't even ask." Andrew has a displeased look on his face due to the remark, not necessarily the connotation. "Wasn't going to, Doug, but you know that." "What is the target? Where, and why?" David responds with a slight chuckle in his voice. That, David, is no laughing matter. There is a very powerful up-and-coming politician in the Czech Republic that is about to woo the nation back into communism. If that is allowed to happen, then it will be a domino effect. There is a competitive bounty on his head for $5 million. You are the first to arrive, so you are the first with this knowledge. Of course the others will be here within the next couple of hours, so you should go to get distance between you and your competition. The kill has been approved by the bosses upstairs, so to speak. David shakes Doug's hand and gives him a parting hug. The others shake his hand and thank him for his time. The team then sets off to Prague. Contestant number 3. Mike arrives at the mansion via limo with Nook to see the host saying goodbye to a man in a Chinese-style white hat getting into his own convertible. The man revs the engine and tells Doug, "Consider it done, dude, the others have no chance." And no promises on the casualties. Later, the man in white spins out and speeds away. Doug towards the trail of dust with visual disdain for the party departing. "Ah, you must be Mike." Doug greets him as they walk up the steps together. "I trust Nook took great care of you and kept you entertained." Mike nods. Doug senses Mike is eager to get at the job and not waste time by his scowl and nervous fidgeting of his hand. "The job?" Mike asks bluntly, before Doug could offer even a single amenity. "Kill a political leader in Europe." Doug lights a cigarette. 2 others are on the job with but a few hours head start, if that is even considered to be one. Doug hands Mike a dossier. "All you need is in there. Now continue your journey to the Czech Republic, since you are so hellbent on the job at hand." Doug states with a sigh as Mike proceeds towards the limo. "I am eternally grateful for this outside chance, and the pleasure in the meeting was all mine. I just know 2 others are in front of me for the same prize." Elaboration on the target. "Is everything in place?" David asks Andrew. "Yeah, I have 3 weapons waiting for you in the northwest building's 10th floor. It overlooks the balcony where the target is going to be located. Extra points for blood spatter." Andrew adds with a scoff as he sits back on the couch of the suite. "What is his name?" Matt asks in a nearly solemn tone of voice. David and Andrew glance at each other as they peer at Matt. "His name, the man we are killing, has a name." Have you forgotten that they are humans too? David winces his eyes slightly. The two remain silent for a moment. Matt hands a sheet from his briefcase to David. Jan Miz is in the folder. Pronounced Yan Mish, which translates to John Mouse, essentially. Local anti-communist agencies have run with the last name calling him a rodent, but this rodent has dug in deep. David lowers his head slightly. We may be mercenaries, but we are lives-ending lives. We are not good, we are not evil. This is our profession. What weapon will I be using and what is our plan? David asks after his melancholy speech. 8.50 calories will be awaiting you in a bell tower that overlooks the old castle steps. The target will be walking up that path for his public appearance. This is when you take the shot, then zipline out, shed your outer layer and hop on a tram at the stop to blend in with the local traffic. David sighs. I'll be back in a bit. I'm going to look at the local. Andrew, I trust you will deliver the package to meet me there. Andrew nods. The setup. The day of. Noon is no joke when you don't have shadows or a breeze to counter the heat. David says into his earpiece. I hear ya, Matt states. Andrew, you copy that? Andrew sighs. I do, but why do we have to have a live connection at all times? I understand during the op, but live to each of us. David pauses his stroll in a tourist-filled alleyway leading from one square to another. Think of it like this. We aren't the only ones here for this target. I have my sidearm only at the moment. If anything were to happen, you guys would hear it. Also, this type of headset has two settings. The one we are on now is highly susceptible to interference. A type of giveaway, for if there is another group communicating nearby. The other setting is the more secure and harder to interfere with once things are in our favor or nearly complete. Still experimental though. After a long pause, Andrew just says, 10-4 feet. After a 20-minute walk through Wenceslav Square, David comes to the long steps leading to the presidential castle. He envisions the target traveling down the steps, waving to the crowds, signing autographs and being hurried by his protection force. Then a single shot, the body going limp, the crowd in horror. David makes his departure opposite of his target site, zips to an adjacent roof, then nonchalantly joins the street crowd via someone's private yard entrance. Clean kill, easy getaway, and the country won't have the choice to elect a new socialist dictator. David heads back on the same tram that he will take later that night to know what to expect as far as timing. Not knowing much, he is accosted by an older lady that appears to be complaining about her walking space to him, when he is as prone against the wall as he possibly could be. She said, "You are very rude and are a kid," a red-headed English speaker said that was down the car from David. David looks at him intently. Why would he clarify that for him? The older generation of this country expects the younger to evacuate a tram for them just so the older one's oxygen isn't taken. I could tell you are American, maybe she could too. Take care, common tongue. The man states as he gets off at a curve by a park. David becomes entranced in thought. David, who was that? This thing picks up idle conversation rather well. Matt asks. Hell if I know, David responds. The time is now. That night David arrives at the bell tower and grabs the package. He lines up the shot an hour before the reception is supposed to end. I got the intel that they are taking the right exit at the top from one of the workers a couple nights back. It is easy how much info a peon will part with when you get him a beer or two. Speaking of which, those things are huge. Matt explains. I need to know about the beer right now. Why? David asks. Before Matt could answer, David adds, what about the possibility of the lower exit and the left exit? Andrew cuts in. There is a high rise to your right that has a secondary shooting site set up. But it will be a harder shot through trees, so that weapon is equipped with a high-intensity night vision scope that can outline the target easier. David waits. The third man. No, I have more guns than both of them combined. I will be fine. They are amateurs. I could drink and party until the guy goes to close the door on his bulletproof limo, and I could pop one single shot and still do better than them combined. A rather drunken Duncan exclaims. The third contract competitor. You can barely stand Duncan. How are you going to even get there? Drive your own limo. Duncan's handler retorts. Hey, there's an idea. Bartender, get me a limo. Call them and tell them it is for me. The bartender scoffs, and you are. Duncan's laughter and boisterous nature turns into a snarky know-it-all. Only one of the greatest mercenaries alive, bro. It's obvious you aren't in the know. Why don't you get your boss's boss and I will tell him how you suck at life, and then I will buy this place 10 times over just to fire you, rehire you, Then just fire you again, you low-life piece of. Duncan's handler grabs him and throws an envelope of money to the bartender who had started to come around the bar to do justice. The envelope was prepackaged with a business card of the handler along with 5,000 American dollars. Sorry for the troubles. The shot. David waits patiently. Any moment the target should come out of the door, but there is no motion. Instead, a beam of light hits the stairs part way up. The heat leaves the air quickly on Czechoslovakian autumn nights. The security team changed routes which were predictable. David immediately zips to the other building in the darkness. 40 more seconds and I'm in position. It will take him about a minute 20 to get to his limo. I have plenty of time. David thinks to himself. He makes it to the third floor and his vantage point with the second rifle. He lines up the group of targets and activates the night vision. He winces as his eye adjusts to the new extreme light. David lines up the shot, taking in the gate of the target and wind. What? There is a sudden bright flash just in front of David that sears his retina in his right eye. David flinches as he hears a familiar voice. Too bad, common tongue. A gunshot rings out. The time of the shot and the shell hitting the ground was pushing an infinite bound. They didn't see him. My elbow has a sharp pain and I feel like to the left of me is up. My vision is whitewashed unless I look to the left of me. What has he done? Who was that shot for? I'm not dead yet. David looks up but is blind in one eye. The bell tower was a great idea. The man hoists the rifle at attention. I thought of it too. I saw your kid and decided to watch, and I saw your guy place a second one. Our third contractor is Predis. Mike is cut off by a shout. The location has been found. Cheers, lad. Enjoy the escape, if you are capable. David leans to get up in a jump motion away from Mike, but Mike strikes David with the butt of the rifle and shoves it into his hands. Mike heads up the stairwell as David recovers. David tries to follow, still disoriented. Contingency plan. Comms are open, multiple reinforcements approaching. Right eye still no sight. Matt, get me a sitrep. David grunts angrily as he stumbles. Matt and Andrew are just off site in a cafe with dummy computers up. Matt leaves immediately as Andrew covers for their swift departure, telling the clerk about a false illness and pays for the time. Matt runs towards the building, counting police weapon lights as he goes. David, I see at least a dozen storming the building now. I see lights on the first 5 floors traveling upwards in the stairwell too. No shit. How did this happen? How could he sneak up like that? He blinded me in one eye. He blinded me. Can't stop rubbing it. The world seems spherical now. Have to compensate. Have to get out undetected. Fuck. David makes it to the top to see no trace of Mike. David checks the ammo in his .45 and listens intently to the approaching footsteps. He opens his mouth and pops his ears to allow better acoustic resonance. They run so fast I can kick one into the other, and handle the third just enough to flee. Am I sure I can't jump over? David glances back once more. The whole deck is lit up from below with various light sources. He hears 3 people approaching quickly. The first man enters the rooftop access and is struck in the temple with the pistol. Disoriented, the man's grip on his SMG is stilted. David kicks his leg and contorts him into a shield. Shit. His guard was up. They are too spaced out. Plan B, joints and disarmament. The second pulls a gun up to fire. David beats him to it with 3 shots. Leg, torso, head, but this shot only maims and jars the soldier. The officer's gun fires as he goes down. The spray strikes the officer in David's grasp. Time has frozen again. A casualty. No turning back now. Maybe David's train of thought stops and his reflexes come back. The third freezes looking at his down fellow officer and raises his shotgun. David drops the dead body and tackles him before he could raise his shotgun. The man struggles to pull his sidearm. Stop. The cop manages a muffled scream. He raises his gun as David tilts his head to adjust for the situation. David tries to wrangle and reach an advantageous position to disarm or subdue the cop. His armor proves this task impossible in the short amount of time needed to still escape. David executes him. More footsteps approach. David looks into the stairwell, police uniforms on their way up. David looks at the 3 he just took out. 2 tactical suits and 1 suit and tie. David hastily swaps the clothes with one of the officers and begins to make himself cough ferociously. The officers come up and David just coughs as they shout in Czech. Breathe. Gasp. Not too hard. Make progress. Get out alive. David points to the officer that he had shot in the face as he stumbles down the steps as if he was going to a medic. David, what's wrong? Did you get hit with a gas grenade? Do you need medical backup? David gets just outside and stops his coughing and walks right by surrounding officers too busy on their radio to inspect David closely. I'm okay, but we lost the contract, and I can't see out of my right eye. Meet me back at the hotel. Aftermath. What in the hell? David exclaims while still furiously rubbing his eye as he paces in the hotel room. We scoped the place out. I don't get it. There were no signs of the other contract holders. Matt exclaims loudly. We need a hospital, David. Is there any pain? Andrew murmurs to himself at first, as if in a daze from the recent events. He could have killed you, David. David glances towards Andrew as Matt rambles on about the statistics and placement, trying to console himself more than anyone else in the room. David, Andrew states more sternly. This time David barks back towards Matt about how the book is a general guideline and that they needed to be better than this. David, Andrew shouts. The two pause with a mix of anger and worry in their already churning emotions. He could have killed you. He didn't. He had time. He had ample opportunity, but he let you live. To come back to us. To claim the prize and place blame on you. Which means us. David continues his pacing. I know. I've thought of that already, but it does no good to consider what if or why. We need to make progress. To answer the question, a hospital is too risky but necessary. David sighs. I know of one a couple hours from here in the town of Wrocław. They help foreigners very well. Matt states in the most collective tone of anyone since the preceding events. Perhaps just his calm composure alone is all the other two needed to clear their minds. The trio fled the capital that night due to the severity of the incident. David killed 2 police officers. Albeit due to a direct attack from Mike. David will be the sole carrier of the blame. David and his team know full and well the repercussions. Depending on severity, a merc's license can be revoked, but usually a contract is placed on such mercenary for gross civilian casualties. Who is in charge of that decision? SHADOW. Ellipsis. The one and only. Scheme of things to come. Single quote. Do I make myself clear? There is no use calling them. I already have them in a secure location and they will only be unharmed and released upon your death or his. I don't care about your methods or loyalty. This is happening. Deal with it. Get Mr. Moore to your location and make an example out of him. The ominous voice belts out with a strong, stern tone. Single quote. Get together whatever army you can get for me. Make it seem like we are on high alert for housing him, then make sure that they know once I hit the safe room that he is to be killed. Get Mike on it too. Maybe he can finish the job. Doug says fearfully into his landline. Doug has been instructed to eliminate David due to his casualty in the Czech Republic. There has been no great public outcry, but someone is exerting pressure on David nonetheless. Doug shakes as he lights a fine thin cigar and looks out over his vineyard from his back porch gondola. J. Send all servants off but the execs and call my reserves to lie in wait to ambush David if he does take the bait. We have 2 days to prepare. But if he catches wind of any of this, God help us all. I know one thing about David from when he started at the academy. He can move mountains with the determination he has. If his skill is as honed as it has been rumored, that mountain would be made of bones of any in his righteous path. Recovery. David is taken to a hospital in Wrocław, but the team is met by a doctor who has no foreign accent at all. We anticipated you would flee. Lay back on the table and don't worry about a thing. The man, 6'3" and slender with a sailor's style beard. Call me Lee. The organization that I work for has taken great interest in your skill sets. David, wearing sunglasses, sitting on the medical chair, seemingly unbothered by this stranger's presence. Who do you work for? Why the sudden interest in me? David asks as Andrew stands at attention, acting as if he was ready for a SEAL team to intervene at this point. My group has no true name, but a slogan may clear it up. You can't have a shadow without a light and a pillar. The man pauses as he pulls a satchel out of his woolly suit jacket pocket. You lost your sight. You found Germany's greatest surgical optometrist, as well as blurting out your condition on your shortwave radio. Our people intercepted, and I believe you are a great candidate for a new device we are developing. Lee finishes as he hands Andrew the small box. I think I have heard of your group. Street name was Golden Robes or something, right? Lee smirked. Or something. Andrew's demeanor suddenly shifts as he unboxes the item. Andrew pulled up a false eye with an antenna on the back of it. It had a blue-gold tint to it with a single engraving C7. David, With this tool you could amass great power and utilize strategies unheard of by friends and foes alike. David cuts in, strategies. Will I be able to see again? And why attempt to invest in me? I expect to be hunted down for this failure any time now. I must get a hold of someone soon, so what do you want from me if I use this item? David exclaims. We will get to the failed contract with Doug soon enough. You will need this eye to save the day. Andrew has a slightly shocked look to his face. How did he know about Doug? We have enough to worry about failing a contract and a civilian casualty. How do you? Andrew is cut off by Lee. Doug's compound is surrounded by other mercenaries. He was going to offer you a makeup job, but your failure is seen as his failure. You have very little time to get to him and utilize this new weapon, if you choose to do so. I have also already sent schematics and other R&D specs to your third party. Matt. David calls out to Matt in the hall, who is reading on his laptop. Is this legit, Matt? Matt grunts as he speeds through the many pages of the digital document. I see no red flags. And this thing is incredible. Momentary electromagnetic displacement of tri-axis range, M accelerometer via concentrated strike. Matt speaks so quickly that he is unintelligible. English, please. David exclaims. In short, stop bullets and manipulate objects in your immediate vicinity. Lee interjects. After extensive training and calibration, those features will become invaluable but are costly to the user. The less taxing features include night vision, thermal vision. The enemies have no idea of this technology, and in return we want statistics on it as access to study the data for potential mass use. David asks, you said save the day. How can we make it in time? Lee heads to the door. The next room is ready to install now if you are ready. Time is of the essence. David thinks for a moment. Statistically I will be hunted. I have no friends left and no one watching my back. I have no strategic choice. David follows into the room. Lee turns to Andrew and Matt. Give us 30 minutes. Coming or going? Mike approaches Doug's compound to see barricades being prepared. It has now been 32 hours since the elimination of the target. May I help you? Jay, the assistant, inquires as he adjusts a carbine over his shoulder. Just here to collect. Seems a bit high-strung here, eh? Jay looks through Mike and motions him to follow. Mike is led upstairs 3 flights to an office where Nook storms out. For once you can't tell me why I am suiting up for you. Suddenly. No, I'm gone. Get someone else to hold your leash. Nook storms down the stairs cursing to himself. Mike approaches hesitantly. Bad time for a paycheck. Doug seems distracted and distraught. Money. In a time, Lee. Doug's expression reflects an epiphany. Triple the money right now. I have a proposal. Seems like someone is targeting me and will be here shortly. Mike scoffs. Just leave. Doug chuckles and smirks. What? Die tired and lose my home field advantage. Doug hands Mike a bag with 1 million, then turns to a stack of luggage behind him and opens another to find more money. He slides 3 more bags to Mike. 1 extra for the road. Just keep me alive long enough to see tomorrow. Mike is hesitant. You have an army. Why do you need me? And you telling me you have 4 million in killing to do? I have a sidearm and a rifle. You have guns here. Enough for a few small armies. Doug replies. It is the first sound of confidence he has had the entire conversation. Did I do that? David comes out of the surgical room and is asked if he is okay by Matt, who was standing to the left. David glances towards him to nod in affirmation when a cabinet door rips off the wall and flies towards Matt. Matt dives out of the way. The hell? Matt exclaims. David is stunned, but Lee seems pleased. Andrew snickers. We have a cargo jet for you to fly to the outskirts of Doug's compound and drop in. Lee states as he hands David a small fluid pack to drink. David looks puzzled. Electrolytes run the power of the eye. From here on you must consume often before and after use. The team is led to a cargo plane that has a special padded room where David can practice basic techniques en route.
If you have listened thus far, I am very, very pleased that you have made it to the end of the first entry. I am not a novel writer by heart or anything that this is supposed to resemble in my mind. I am glad for technology that I can do, as you heard, get a version of this, get it out there, establish who this character is that I've been working on for over 15 years. And if you want more, leave a like, share, comment. There are 5 stories altogether in this release. So, again, Thank you for listening. Hope you enjoy, and hope you were and are and will continue to be kind with any of the poor grammatical things that the free to use AI had not picked up on when I was typing, or just my typical typographical errors. Thank you again. Take care.